Welcome back to the last part of this exercise. In this portion of the video, we're going to learn how to color match the background with the image of the girl, and we're going to learn how to clean up the edges of this girl to make it appear more realistic. I want to point out that this mural background doesn't really match the same tones and contrast of the girl. What that means is that these blacks are not really dark enough and these lights aren't really light enough. If you take a look at the girl, you'll notice that there's a lot more contrast here. The areas of her that have the color black on them are really, really dark, and then areas that have white on them are really, really light. So this is a very high contrast image. The mural background image is more low contrast. So we want to change these colors a little bit so they match and look more realistic. Now we are getting into the image adjustment or photo adjustment portion of Photoshop and Photopea. What we want to do is make sure we're clicked on the mural layer and then go to Image on the top left, Adjustments, and Brightness and Contrast. You'll notice two things popped up. This brightness and contrast window popped up, and then this thing called Smart Filter also popped up. In Photoshop, when you have what's called a smart object, it's directly reading this file from your computer. If you make it smaller or larger, it's going to keep the same quality because it's reading it from your computer. So you can't actually make any permanent changes to the picture. That's why it adds what's called a smart filter that you can delete at any time and get the original picture back. Now that we have this window up, I want to very simply just bring up the contrast of this image. You'll immediately start noticing the dark colors getting a lot darker. We also want to touch up the brightness a little bit and bring this up as well. This is really something that you have to eyeball when you're doing it on your own. You don't necessarily have to use the same numbers that I'm using here. I'm just kind of looking at it and seeing, does this look right? Is this enough? I think this is pretty okay. I think I've adjusted the contrast enough to where it looks more realistic. So I'm now gonna click OK. Now that we have the colors more matched, we want to clean up the image of this girl. This is the last thing that we're going to do before we end this exercise. So I'm going to click on the background layer, and in fact, I'm going to rename it at this moment. I'm going to double click it and call it girl, just so it's not called background anymore. And I'm going to take my lasso tool, zoom in to areas that I think need cleaning up, and select and delete them. So I'm just going to go down the line, and I'm starting to notice issues here. So there's a little bit of a white outline on the pants. I'm going to just select it very carefully with my lasso tool and then hit backspace or delete on my keyboard. A really easy way to deselect when you want to work quickly is just now to click outside of the selection like this. Now I'm going to move on and continue. This area here is getting a little bit messy, so I'm just going to select this with my lasso tool and hit backspace or delete on my keyboard. I want to continue through and clean these areas up as best as I can so the image looks as realistic as I can make it look. Once you get the hang of this, you can do it pretty quickly. It just takes a little while to get used to. Looks like the major issues are just on the pants where there's a dark background because these like white outlines are really obvious. So those are really the only parts you need to clean up. What I'm doing here, by the way, for anyone who noticed, I'm not going all the way back to where I started because I know that wherever I end my selection, it's gonna automatically snap a straight line to where I started, like that. If you want to work more quickly, you can do the same thing. It looks like there are some issues right there as well. And now I'm going to zoom out and take a look at my image. It looks like I missed a few spots over here. So I'll zoom back in and clean these up. And then zoom back out and take a look. This looks a lot better than when I started. In some cases, if you place the mural where her hair is falling on a dark background, kind of like this, you may need to also go in and clean other things up. So not everyone has to clean the leg areas. In some cases, you might have to clean up the hair instead. So if you do have to clean up the hair, I'll show you how to do that as well. If this isn't a problem for you, then you are pretty much done with the project and you can save and turn it in. So for those of you who landed the background in a dark area contrasting with the hair, we're just going to keep using the lasso tool and cleaning it up. So we're really just doing the exact same thing we were doing down there with the legs. I just want to be a little bit more careful here because if you get rid of too much of the hair, it's going to start looking distorted. So I'm getting rid of this whole strand. I don't think I need it. And then I'll get rid of like these pieces inside. And then I'll get rid of these lighter pieces on the shoulder. There are some easier ways to do this in Photoshop, but unfortunately, because we have to stick with Photopea, we're using the slightly longer method, but it's not too much longer. So it's not much to worry about. I might just clean this up a little as well. I think I made this look a little bit funny, but this is just practice really, so it's okay. I'm going to scroll down, and since I moved the image of the mural, I might have gotten some other areas that I need to clean up, like here. Again, if your mural looked fine against the girl, then you don't have to do all this extra stuff. I'm just doing it just in case someone got a different portion that they have to fix. But it's all really the same thing. You always want to zoom out and just make sure everything looks okay. And in my case, I think this is pretty good, and I think I'm good to save and turn it in at this point. Everything looks clean and neat, and it does look like a pretty realistic image. So at this point, go ahead and save. Make sure before you turn it in, you have changed the name of the project. Just double click the tab up here and type in your last name, underscore first name, underscore BG for background, replacement. And then click OK. Once you're done, just make sure you are saving it as a PSD. So you would just want to go to File and then Save as PSD. This is a really important thing to note. It took a good 5 or 6 seconds for it to save. So please don't be impatient and click it like 4 times. It'll just take a few seconds, but it will ultimately download and you can turn it in. Good luck to everyone, and I'll see you guys on the next exercise.